Thomas and Friends Storytime, The Tiger Train, a podcast story for kids, starring Thomas, Yongbao, Sandy and Carly. Based on the railway series by the Reverend W. Awdry, created by Britt Allcroft and read by me, Rachel Louise Miller. And now it's story time. Over the hill and round the bend, you'll find a large roundhouse called Tidmouth Sheds, where 5 little engines sleep soundly at night and wake in the morning as the sun shines its light. They all have work to do and cargo to tow. For this happy crew, it's all engines go. Today's story is all about being brave. It's called The Tiger Train. One day, Thomas arrived at Brendam Docks to find Percy, Nia and Diesel talking to a very special visitor who had come all the way from China. Can you guess who it is? It was Yongbao. Yongbao had brought fireworks for the big fireworks show that evening. Percy looked at the big gold tiger painted on Yongbao's side. Yongbao, will you tell us again how you earned your gold tiger? Percy asked excitedly. Yongbao was a very brave engine, but he didn't like to show off. It wasn't such a big deal, he said. Oh, please tell us the story, cried the other engines. Okay, said Yongbao. It was for the time I rescued... But Yongbao had seen something. Huh? James, Annie and Clarabelle? James, Annie and Clarabelle? Said Percy, puzzled. I thought you rescued an engine who was trapped in the snow. But Yongbao was racing towards the rail crossing. The gates were stuck open and Yongbao could see that James, Annie and Clarabelle were about to crash into Gordon, who was speeding towards the crossing from the other direction. Ah! Shouted James as he saw Gordon and tried to stop. Oh no! Shouted Annie and Clarabelle. Yongbao quickly buffered up behind James and slammed on his brakes. Screech! Yongbao, James, Annie and Clarabelle stopped just before they reached the crossing. Thank you! Shouted Gordon as he raced past them. Oh, phew, that was close. Woohoo! Cheered the other engines. Everyone thought that Yongbao had been very brave, but Thomas wished he had been the one to stop the crash to show Yongbao how brave he was. Later that day, Thomas and Yongbao were at Cannonball Curve when they heard what sounded like an explosion in the distance. Yikes! Shouted Thomas. That came from the old mine. We'd better go and see what happened. Thomas and Yongbao found Gordon at the entrance to the mine. Gordon said there had been a rock fall. Everyone was okay, but Sandy and Carly were still trapped inside the mine. Thomas thought this was his chance to show Yongbao how brave he was. Don't worry, Gordon. Yongbao and I can rescue Sandy and Carly, Thomas said. Thomas and Yongbao raced into the mine. Down, down, down they went. It was dark and cold and scary, but they kept going. The 2 engines came to an old wooden bridge across a deep cavern. Thomas looked over the edge into the blackness at the bottom of the mine. Thomas, are you okay? Yongbao asked. Yeah, I'm not scared, said Thomas, trying his best to look brave. You're not? Replied Yongbao. I am. Thomas was surprised. If Yongbao was scared, maybe it was okay for Thomas to be scared too. I'm terrified, admitted Thomas. I only said I wasn't so you'd think I was as brave as you. Well, you have to be scared before you can be brave, Yongbao smiled. Courage is facing what scares you. So Thomas and young Bao headed across the rickety old bridge. But as they reached the other side, creak, groan, clank. The bridge fell apart, sending the track they had just crossed crashing into the cavern below. "Come on, we need to keep going and find Sandy and Carly," said young Bao. "Let's do this," replied Thomas bravely. The two engines continued further into the mine. Then they heard shouts. "Help! Help!" It was Sandy and Carly. Thomas and young Bao soon came to a huge pile of rocks blocking the track. Sandy and Carly were trapped on the other side. "Are you guys okay?" Thomas shouted. "We're totally fine," Sandy called. "But really stuck, and we could use your help." "No problemo," said Thomas. "If we work together, we'll get you out in no time. You pull the rocks and we'll push." So they pulled and they pushed and... crash! The rock wall crumbled and Sandy and Carly were free. "Oh, thank you, Thomas. Thank you, young Bao," said Sandy and Carly. But the rescue wasn't over yet. They still had to fix the broken bridge so they could cross over the cavern and get out of the mine. Back at the broken bridge, Thomas could see a pile of new tracks, but they were on the other side of the bridge. "Sandy and Carly, could we use those tracks to fix the bridge?" he asked. "Sure," replied Sandy. "But how are we going to get them?" Thomas had an idea. "I'll need your help, young Bao, and your hook, Carly." So with Carly's hook tied tightly around Thomas's cab, young Bao pushed Thomas towards the gap in the bridge. "Full steam ahead!" shouted Thomas as he flew across the gap and landed on the other side of the cavern. Now, with Carly on one side of the broken bridge and her hook on the other, they had created a zip wire across the gap with Carly's line. Sandy grabbed onto the line and slid down the zip wire. "Awesome!" she shouted as she landed next to Thomas. Sandy quickly collected the tracks and slid back along the zip wire. "Clickety-clack, snap, track! Clickety-clack, snap, track!" Sandy and Carly sang as they used the track to fix the bridge. Soon, everyone had crossed the bridge, and together they made their way safely out of the mine. That evening at Cannonball Curve, Thomas, young Bao, Sandy and Carly were waiting to watch the fireworks when Percy, Nia and Diesel arrived. "We heard what happened. Are you guys okay?" said Percy. "Good thing young Bao was with you," added Diesel. "Actually, I couldn't have done it without Thomas," said young Bao. "He was super brave." Thomas smiled. "Well, yeah, but we helped each other be brave." Just then, there was a bang and a whiz and a pop. The engines gasped as they looked up. Hundreds of red, yellow, pink, purple and blue sparkles flashed across the sky. It was the most amazing firework display ever. Young Bao had shown Thomas that to be brave, you've got to be scared too, because helping others and being true is exactly what brave engines do. The end. Listen out for other adventures with Thomas and Friends Storytime. Parents, if you liked what you heard, like, review and subscribe to our channel. Tell your friends too. Thomas and Friends is a registered trademark of Ghislaine Thomas Limited.